Hi there, welcome back. So we're going to be talking about the immune system. This is the part 3 of our immune system video lecture series. And we were talking about the second branch, the second line of defense, the non-specific internal cellular and chemical defenses. And I do apologize, I got cut off in part 2 a bit, so we're going to start on this slide here and continue our discussion on the body's defense mechanisms. So we were talking about those non-specific defense mechanisms like your phagocytes, macrophages and neutrophils, those white blood cells, the complement proteins and other type of proteins like interferons. Interferons are a special type of protein that is able to help us fight viruses specifically because virus-infected cells secrete interferons that help the other body cells, tissue cells that have not been infected to be able to fight that virus. And it causes them to be able to make certain proteins that would interrupt the replication cycle of the virus. But interferons specifically, as far as defensive proteins go, do not help to fight bacteria infections or fungal infections. So that's an important aspect of that specific type of cytokine. They are specifically for viruses. And they also, interferons also are able to help to activate the natural killer cells too. So we're going to continue in this part of the lecture series, and we're going to be talking about the white blood cells a little bit more, and about complement protein attack complexes a little bit more, and then we're going to cover the inflammatory response and fever. So your macrophages are those specialized white blood cells that start out as monocytes in the bloodstream, and then when they're called to the infection, they are the second to arrive because they're a little more slower acting. It takes 12 hours for them to be activated, and monocytes differentiate into macrophages at that point. But once they are activated, they have these insatiable appetites. So these are large phagocytic cells that are able to patrol our extracellular fluid and engulf and digest pathogens when they encounter them. They also secrete the cytokines. Cytokines is actually a big category of cell-to-cell signaling molecules. But these cytokines attract other white blood cells, the macrophages, other neutrophils, and the dendritic cells to the infection site. Macrophages and dendritic cells also have a special role in that they are antigen presenting cells. So they are able to take a piece of that bacteria cell or that virus and put that on their MHC markers so that they can show that to the T cells of our immune system to activate T cells. And we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. So there's our chart of all these different kinds of white blood cells. And so you can see the macrophage here is one of the major phagocytic cells of our blood, the neutrophils, and then the dendritic cells. So let's talk a little bit more about those complement proteins. So when complement proteins become activated, they activate by encountering antigens. And remember, an antigen is a protein that is embedded in the capsid or the membrane of a bacteria cell that would be invading us, or it is a protein that is on the protein coat of a virus. So once complement proteins become activated, they can do this cascading enzyme reaction that causes these attack complexes to form. And these attack complexes can then puncture the bacteria cell capsid and membrane and cause the bacteria cell directly to pop and lyse that bacteria cell. So the complement proteins also attract phagocytes, the white blood cells, to the infection site, and they can tag pathogens for destruction by the phagocyte too. They can kind of mark the pathogen for destruction. So this is a diagram showing how those complement attack complexes can form. So here you can see an activated complement binded to this bacteria cell. So that causes this cascade of enzymes that can form these little attack complexes that can puncture the bacteria cell's phospholipid bilayer and cause these pores. And then those pores allow water in, and the bacteria cell then pops or lyses because of those attack complexes that can form. So the complement proteins bind to the sugar or proteins like antibodies on the foreign cell's surface. And then the result is this attack complex that can form and then pop that bacteria cell. So here you can see how that enzyme cascade can form these pores that then can cause that bacteria cell to lyse. So next we want to talk about inflammation. Inflammation has a very important role in our immune system. All of these cardinal signs of inflammation all have adaptive value to help us to be able to fight pathogens that would be invading our body. So inflammation really helps to destroy the invaders, to repair and restore that damaged tissue. So inflammation is a local response to tissue damage. It's characterized by 4 cardinal signs: your redness, warmth, swelling, and pain. And these are triggered by those activated complement and cytokine proteins. The mast cells are the white blood cells that release histamine. And what histamine does is increase the capillary permeability so that those other white blood cells can exit the capillary bed easier and be able to get into the tissue spaces. So then those phagocytes, the phagocytic cells, the macrophages, the neutrophils, can leak out. The plasma proteins can leak out that could potentially form the complement attack complexes that we were talking about earlier and attack the invaders. They can form clots and they can clean up the debris. So the first 2 cardinal signs of inflammation are your redness and your heat. So when those mast cells release histamine, this causes the blood vessels to dilate, and that blood flow to the area then increases, bringing important nutrients, delivering those defensive white blood cells that are coming in the blood, the main transportation device all over our body, and also helping to remove the dead cells and the toxins. So the redness is from that increased blood flow to the area. The heat has adaptive value also because as the temperature rises, then you have increased metabolic activity of the tissue cells so that they can start the healing process and start healing faster and better. You also have an increased metabolic activity of the white blood cells who are fighting the infection. So that's the adaptive value of the heat, to really increase the metabolic capacity of our cells to be able to start the healing process, to increase the activity of the white blood cells that are our soldiers fighting that infection. The last 2 signs of inflammation are swelling and pain. So the swelling is because histamine causes those capillary blood vessels to become leaky, and we have more fluid that seeps into those tissue spaces. But that fluid brings important things along with it. It brings clotting factors if there's been damage to tissues, so um, that our blood can clot if there's been cut or scrapes from that inflammation. It brings oxygen, it brings nutrients. And then the last cardinal sign is the pain. The pain can be caused by a variety of things. Your excess tissue fluid causing pressure buildup on certain body tissues and organs. Bacterial toxins also can cause pain. And then the prostaglandins. The prostaglandins are lipid molecules that are found in and released by the plasma membrane of most cells. And these are signaling molecules. They're proteins that are signaling molecules by cells too. So these are local hormones or signaling molecules that exert effects on the secreting cell itself or nearby cells. So it's kind of like the warning at the cellular level that something bad is going on. Also, if there's pain in an area of tissue, we're going to naturally, the organism is going to instinctually try to protect that area so that it won't be used and that healing can result for that particular damaged area. In your joints, if you have a synovial joint, for instance, that or broken bones or damage to that joint, you can have that swelling or edema cause the stiffness of that joint so that that joint is almost naturally splinted by that inflammatory response so that that joint can heal if you have any broken bones that need to heal for that organism. So those are the cardinal signs of inflammation. So this is a diagram showing the inflammatory response. So here you have bacteria that are coming in to this area. They're releasing certain toxins. You have the mast cells secreting the histamine and causing the fluids to come out and into the damaged area or inflamed area. And here you have the white blood cells being able to come out into the tissue spaces easier and because of the fluid and getting in to really engulf those bacteria, do phagocytosis, and deal with the infection. So here's a diagram that describes those four cardinal signs of inflammation. So here you can see we have the pinprick and then the redness, bringing in more blood to the area, the heat, increasing the metabolic activity, the swelling so that we have more fluids coming to that area, providing more nutrients and white blood cells, the ability to leave the capillary beds and truly come out in there. And get into those tissue spaces easier the more fluid the extracellular environment is, and then the pain response here so that the person knows that they have a problem in a certain tissue and they can start to clean up that area and let it heal. Here it's just a little pinprick, so clean that area up and put a band-aid on from the outside and help that situation get better. Here you can see the complement protein coming and binding to bacteria cells that would have come in with that pin and being able to actually pop them and cause them to die. Here's some phagocytes engulfing the bacteria and then the blood clot forming right there. And last but not least, in our nonspecific immune response, we have fever, a temporary rise in body temperature. So this increase in body temperature enhances the immune response by speeding up metabolism and phagocyte activity. And it's caused by the prostaglandins or pyrogens. And these can be from either bacterial toxins or from our own body tissue cells to reset our temperature, which is controlled by the hypothalamus in the brain to help kill those invading pathogens. Thank you.